Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whenever you find a way to watch this podcast. It is me, Omar Ashan Borja, the Burger Popper, and I am back with John, aka Coastal Elite Ball Knower, Glowatz, to talk about another week, enough just to recap another week and look at the bowl races and playoff races in the Northeast. It was a big weekend for a couple of ranked teams, well, actually a trio of ranked teams. Mixed results all around, though. A couple teams left unhappy, couple ranked teams left unhappy. One team continued their run despite some last minute circumstances, but can't wait to get into it, John. How's everything going?
Yeah, Omar, the dream of the three Northeast team 12 team playoff. I guess that's a tongue twister, but that dream maybe not dead, but on life support. Omar, this weekend did not serve well for the Northeast playoff hopes.
Yeah, absolutely. There have been better weeks in Northeast football this year and in other years. But starting from the top, Penn State, Ohio State was the game of the week. Game day and big noon kickoff were there. And it was four versus three. And we're talking about beforehand. I thought this was Penn State's year, but an unfortunate fourth and goal situation. It's always a fourth down play calling. I remember back in 2019 with the infamous Saquon Barkley draw play. Throughout this streak, I guess fourth down play calling has been a question mark for Penn State. But I mean, John, what are your thoughts on Penn State's playoff chances, reactions from the game, and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, so many thoughts from the game. I guess it just kind of boils down to, there were a couple of moments that Penn State played well. There was I don't know, a couple of big plays on the defensive side of the ball mostly, but there were just a few more for Ohio State, and like that's just been the way it's gone for the last 10 years. We have to stop trying the same thing and expecting different results. What's that quote about the definition of insanity? So it is what it is at this point. I think it does not really change a ton in terms of Penn State's bowl or not playoff hopes. There's still definitely a potential playoff contender. And what I've always loved about college basketball, which is now kind of translating to college football, is the process of growth in a season. You might start out as not a very good team, and by the end of the season, you might be a lot better. I mean, I know we're not at the beginning of the season; we're somewhere in the middle. But I'm hoping that with this new playoff format, we'll see more of that with with college football teams. Now, I know purists probably don't love that. They say, "Oh, if you lose a game, you should be executed." Basically, that's the college football traditionalist view. But I enjoy the process of growth, so I'm hoping that will bode well for my Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point about college football mirroring college basketball now with like growth throughout the season. And in most, I guess in some conferences, power conferences, one loss doesn't kill you. It just, you draw from it, you learn from it, and you're better from it. I think that's the case with Penn State. They do have a favorable slate to end the year. I'd say Minnesota is honestly a team to watch that November 23rd game. But I still don't see the Gophers beating Penn State, but the schedule's favorable for them to end 11-1. And I kind of feel like too, if they were just to stay pat at 11-1 and let things play out with whoever plays in the Big Ten title game, whether it be Oregon State and Indiana, or Oregon State, Oregon and Ohio State, Oregon and Indiana, because it looks like Indiana versus Ohio State is a de facto Big Ten championship playoff game at this point. So, I mean, I think if they let things play out, be 11-1, be rested for the quarterfinal game or the first round game, I think things could play out well for Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, the one dream dies and another one is reborn or continues. The dream of 10 Indiana or top 10 Indiana is alive. And yeah, I mean, I'll be rooting for them the rest of the way. We'll see them what, 2 weeks versus Ohio State. That's the big matchup. So
Yes.
yeah, that'll be my hope. And then if they win that game, go and play Oregon in the Big Ten championship. So that's silver linings here.
Yeah, exactly. I love the glass half full mentality. Staying in the Keystone State with a rival of Penn State, Pitt. Like you talking about the dream of the three Northeast teams in the playoff might be dead, and Pitt did not help the dream out at all. They got crushed in the 1983 Cotton Bowl rubber match, and I have to think their playoff hopes are over. They don't play Miami, so they won't be able to get a head-to-head tiebreaker on Miami. They do play Clemson at the end, but that game looks like it doesn't really matter anymore after Clemson's loss. So I guess thoughts on Pitt's postseason destination slash I guess playoff hopes now.
Yeah, I mean, Pitt not only lost, but they got destroyed by SMU. I had recorded the game and was planning on watching it this morning. That's what I have to do now in my old age with a 3-year-old son. But when I saw the final score, I didn't even need to watch the whole thing. So yeah, they got waxed. They didn't drop as far in the AP poll as I thought they were going to be. What did they end up like 21, 22, something like
23.
that?
23.
23. Not terrible. I mean, it's not inconceivable that they win the ACC. I think they would need some help, some serious help to even get into the ACC championship. So they certainly don't control their own destiny at this point. And more than likely they are out. But there is still a glimmer of hope there. I imagine, yeah, they need a lot of help. But they're still in line for a good bowl game. What do we say? What was it? The Cheez It Bowl was the or Pop Tart Bowl was the
Yeah. Yeah, Ron
ACC.
Nabisco food property. It's Pop Tarts. I went from Cheez-Its to Pop Tarts this year or last year.
There we go. So yeah, I mean, I think they're a strong contender for that. We'll see. How other things shake out, but yeah, they've got definitely a good chance there at a top non CFP bowl.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, the Pop Tarts Bowl. That's where I've had them. I did not think that they would beat Clemson. I thought they would beat SMU, lose to Clemson, but it might be the reverse now. Lose to SMU, beat Clemson after how Clemson performed this past week. But like you said, they still need help. They would still need or yeah, they would need two losses by SMU down the stretch. And SMU has Cal, they have Boston College, and I think Virginia to end the year. So I mean, losing two of those games that's hardly realistic in my opinion, not counting out those schools just the way things are. So they're not dead, but they're on life support. But like you said, a great bowl game, possibly against a ranked opponent. Probably I would say I have Iowa State being the other opponent in that bowl game in the Pop-Tarts Bowl since Kansas State went last year. So I mean, a respectable destination. Plus, if I was Pitt, honestly, I mean, well, I guess they would play in a warm weather bowl game if they were, in the playoff. But Orlando against a ranked team, that's not a bad life to live, really.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt.
So staying in the North, well, of course, staying in the Northeast, but going up to New York for Army with their game. That's really, I guess, probably the most dramatic game I think before, like pregame with pregame headlines before in the noon slot where we had the news that Bryson Daly wasn't playing for whatever reason, undisclosed. Some people say it's a foot infection. No one really knows, but next man up, Dwayne Coleman. Army goes, they struggle with Air Force in the first half, but dominate the second half, win 20-3. Right now, they're 8-0. They have North Texas, Notre Dame, and UTSA left, and then of course the Army Navy game, and that's if I mean, and then of course the AAC title game, I should say, before the Army Navy game. It's looking like Army's chances of the playoff. I wouldn't say they're high, but it looks like a two-horse race with Boise State and Army at this point, which we'll talk about Navy and their eventful Saturday soon. But I guess what are your thoughts on Army's playoff chances? Something I also want to keep in mind with this situation is I just learned that Colorado State is undefeated in the Mountain West, and they have 3 games against or they have 2 games against sub 500 teams left, one against Fresno State. So there's a realistic chance that UNLV will be taken out of the race entirely for the playoff if Colorado State wins out and goes to the
Hmm.
Mountain West title game. I just realized that.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that either. But yeah, on Army, great that they found a way to win and win fairly handily. Obviously, bit shocking and a big part of their game plan to not have Bryson Daly. So I watched only a little bit of the game because I was watching mostly Penn State at the same time slot, but um, it seemed like every time I flipped to Army, they were coming up with some big play. I don't know if that was just an aberration or what have you, but it was mostly on the defensive side of the ball. But in any case, I think this does nothing bad for their playoff chances. Just shows that they are more of a complete team than just Bryson Daly. My question to you, Omar, would be if Army loses to Notre Dame, but it's close, right? And Boise State suffers one additional loss here down the stretch. Who do you think gets the nod between the two?
So I would think it would still be Boise State because one of their losses would be to the number one team in the country. And I don't know who their other loss would be, but they would still have a win against a potential 11-1 Washington State team that still holds a lot of weight. And even still, Army's best win at that point, like you said, if they lose to Notre Dame and it's close and they win the American, their best win would be against Tulane. So, oh man, that's actually kind of tough now that I think about it because I would put Tulane on par with Washington State with the schedule that they've had. I would still think Boise State because they have that loss, that quality loss to Oregon. And I think that quality loss to Oregon, if they continue to be the number one team in the country, of course, trumps Notre Dame. This would be a harder question if Notre Dame did not lose to Northern Illinois, but I still have to say Boise State.
All right. So we need Army to beat Notre Dame then.
I think so. And I also think something that's like more realistic too would be with I think because UNLV has a stronger resume than Army too. I think the whole Colorado State doomsday scenario that I just realized was very much in play. Colorado State goes 7-0 in the Mount West title game, beats Boise State. So now you have 10-3 Colorado State with a 19-point loss to Colorado that also lost to I think Oregon State along the way. So no wins over power conference teams. I think Army with one loss, a close loss to Notre Dame, would I think have a stronger resume than Colorado State. But I think it's all circular. Like now we're playing, bubble stuff like bracketology with Joe Lenardi, where it's like who has the
Yeah.
best resume. Like now it's becoming like college basketball, like you say, because now I realize that with Colorado State, with like I guess even then beating Boise State, they would have a comparable resume to Army. So, but I think Army straightest path, and as you know, the college football peers, like you mentioned, would want you just beat who's in front of you and let the results fall into place.
Right on.
So going on to Army's Service Academy rival in Navy. Navy had probably one of the worst days, I guess, in their program's history in recent memory. 5-hour weather delay out there in Houston. I think for the first time in almost like a decade, I watched something off ESPN News. So the game got sent to ESPN News for Rice. For I guess their game against Rice was sent out to ESPN News, but Navy struggled against Rice noticeably. I don't know if it was a Notre Dame hangover from the emotions of that, or they were really pressing to prove that they weren't the team that they showed against Notre Dame last week. But if the Notre Dame game pushed them, I guess almost out of front runner position for the playoff. The Rice game pushed them, I think, out of the playoff in general, losing a 2-6 Owl squad. So I think that being said, I think Navy has clinched a spot at home for bowl season with the Military Bowl, but that's still a very good opponent in terms of the ACC. First ACC team to play Navy since 2017. But I guess what are your thoughts on the situation, Navy, and or well, on the situation with Navy, John, and I guess their bowl implications slash if there's any playoff hopes for them.
Yeah, really tough situation there. So the hangover from the Notre Dame game, in which they played well, I thought, aside from all the turnovers, So it's like, I can understand there's still being like frustration there, wanting to show that they're better than they played against Notre Dame. And then you come in and these weather delays, especially when you're away, can really mess with you. I remember when Penn State had a long weather delay a few years back against Michigan State in a year that they could have potentially contended for the CFP, but lost that game. Yeah, it can really mess with, just your cadence, with, with your game plan, what you're wanting to do. You know, I mean, the loss to Rice is fairly inexcusable, and obviously, I think at this point the playoff hope is completely dead. Uh, but with those mitigating factors, I don't think it is potentially as bad as it looks on paper for Navy. If they can right the ship, and and win at least two of these final three before they go against Army on December 14th, then then I think the season is potentially still a success, and then the bowl game and the game against Army obviously are two other factors, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's crazy how we can just lock in the team's bowl spot in the first week of November, but that's just what happens when you're a school that hosts a bowl at your spot at your home campus, and I guess you're a national brand and whatnot. So I think Navy is prime for the Military Bowl, like you said, but I guess coming in with a 10-2 record or 9-3 if they lose to Army on the way, even 8-4. I think 8-4 is the worst case scenario with Tulane and Army on the schedule. But the midshipmen still control their own destiny in the American from what I've heard. So either way, it still can shape out to be a really nice season, but the playoffs seems a bit out of reach, but they do need some chaos. And some chaos can unfold. It is college football. But yeah, like you said, pretty inexcusable loss, and it's a tough position for the midshipmen. But I mean, I'm gonna use the whole, I guess, cliche thing about, America expects them to overcome adversity. So, they will. The men and women at the Naval Academy will overcome adversity as the taxpayers entrust them to do so.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
So going on to Syracuse. Syracuse was one of two Northeast schools to become bowl eligible this weekend. They had a thrilling come from behind victory over Virginia Tech, and it seems like Virginia Tech was bitten by the Boston College choke bug, which I guess we'll talk about Boston College later on. But man, they blew the lead at the Carrier Dome. Syracuse is now 6-3, and they have a chance for, I guess, a strong season to strengthen their bowl destination, so they're not tied up in the lower tier bowls like the Military or the Fenway Bowl. And I guess in these next few weeks, it's about them strengthening their resume so they can get a Power Five opponent in one of these bowl games. I think the Sun Bowl, a bowl that Syracuse has never played in, is still in play should SMU end up winning the ACC and going to the playoff. But I guess plenty of optimism for Syracuse's remaining schedule. They got BC, Cal, UConn, and Miami. I see a team that ends up at 8-4 right now, or sorry, not 8-4, at 9-3, and I just see a team just, having one of the strongest years that they've had in recent memory.
Yeah, I thought Syracuse was dead in the water. I think that was another game that was in the early slot, so I was flipping back and forth. And fortunately, the Penn State game ended fairly early, so I got to watch the end of the Cuse game here. And yeah, I thought there was no way they were coming back and winning, but they pulled off, they pulled off the miracle. Yeah, great win. I mean, it would have been better if they hadn't, dug themselves such a hole to begin with. But hey, what can you do? LeQuint Allen really showed out. Ran for what 121, three touchdowns, added another, I think, 37 in the air. So great, great stat line for him. Maybe he'll be in line to wear that coveted number 44 for Cuse if he ends up staying. You never know these days if who will be playing for next year. But in any case, yeah, I know they go Boston College next week, and that should be a winnable game for them. Who else is on their schedule? Yeah, UConn, Cal, and then Miami. So yeah, they should certainly win two of those. They should certainly be heavily favored in two of those. They should probably have a fighting chance against Cal, I would think. And Miami has looked a little shaky. They're maybe letting the pressure of the undefeated, top 10, top 5 season, get to them a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think 8-4 as the floor for Cuse, and maybe 9-3. if things go well. So, what do you think that puts them at? Still Sun Bowl or something
So
else?
yeah, so if they're 9-3, I'm thinking right now, just with geography and everything. I think Syracuse might get the short end of the stick in terms of bowl destinations because right now, if Georgia Tech reaches bowl eligibility, I do have them going to the Gator Bowl, with them being a few hours from Jacksonville and not appearing in that bowl since 2016, the Sun Bowl. I think it's contingent on SMU winning the ACC or not because the Sun Bowl hasn't had a team play in El Paso. Or it hasn't had a Texas team play in the bowl game since 1999, I think it was the last time, and SMU hasn't played in the Sun Bowl since 1982. So I do see them getting the short end of the stick along with the Pinstripe Bowl also to the Pins because they're in the Pinstripe Bowl 2 years ago. That of course is an easy cop out. So as of right now, I see a very enticing, I want to say 9-3, 8-4 Syracuse team playing a 10-2, 9-3 Navy team. And that honestly, that's an attractive, I think, non-New Year's bowl game. I think that's it's an attractive option. Also, their best hope as well might be the Mayo Bowl, but I think Virginia Tech's pretty prime for that one, should they become bowl eligible. So I just think Syracuse being in the Northeast gets a short end of the stick with this one.
Gotcha.
So staying in the ACC, Boston College. Actually, well, we'll continue with the teams that played and then go to the bye week teams. There were quite a few Northeast teams that had bye weeks. UConn was the other Northeast team to become bowl eligible this week. They had a very close win against Georgia State, a game that was just really entertaining to watch on the Friday night. UConn just it looks like that they have turned the corner to become a consistent bowl team again in the group of five, and it's good to see Jim Moore just take over that program after the state it was in and Randy Edsall's second tenure. They have a chance like Syracuse to end the season on a strong note, 6-3 right now. They got UAB, they got Syracuse on the road, and they got UMass. UAB, I don't know if they turned the corner with Trent Dilfer after what happened this week against Tulsa. I think they dropped 45 in the first half. I think Trent Dilfer finally had enough of being the punching bag of the AAC media. But I mean, UAB looks like a win, I think. And then Syracuse, if they lose that one, then UMass, I think, also looks like a win. So 8-4 UConn, John. Any thoughts on the game this week or how they look to finish the season?
Yeah, I mean the game this week was a little closer than I know the Husky faithful had hoped, but hey, it was a win, and it was a win to get them bowl eligible. Not an amazing game through the air, but they pounded the rock. I think close to 300 yards on the ground. Couple of tutties there. So they got the job done. They found a way to win. Um, I think looking at their remaining schedule, we talked about they have Cuse on the schedule. Obviously, Cuse is favored in that. UMass to end things off. UConn should win that, and then UAB, as you mentioned, should be a UConn win. So looking at an 8-win season, most likely, as a G5 independent. Um, what do we say for them last time? Idaho Potato Bowl. I think that's probably still in the cards.
I think so. I think so. I think with the Idaho Potato Bowl, I think the MAC passes on that one to go to another, I guess, a closer bowl. I think with the Potato Bowl, the potential lies in the caliber of opponent out of the Mountain West. If UConn just stays at 6-6 or 7-5, I see them getting a lower tier Mountain West team. But if they end up finishing strong, 8-4, even 9-3, I can see that. I can see the Mountain West pairing them with maybe a Colorado State per se, or even San Jose State played in that bowl game 2 years ago. I think Colorado State's a best case scenario. I guess 8-5 Colorado State that went to the Mountain West championship game because I think beating a Mountain West runner-up would be a huge accomplishment for UConn. That would be a matchup that they would enjoy. I think worst case scenario for that bowl, if they get sent to Idaho in December, would be a Fresno State squad that struggled and lost to Hawaii last week, blew a 13-point lead. So I still think it's a potato bowl for them. I think they will get the scraps because ESPN events seems kind of petty since UConn does not have a TV contract with ESPN. What reason does ESPN have to just bend over backwards for them? So I do think they'll get the scraps, but I think now they're playing for, I guess, caliber of opponent in terms of bowl game. At least that's in my eyes. I'm not a bowl executive, of course.
Yeah, but You said it. UConn and ESPN, despite being, I don't know how many miles, 30 miles from each other, for some reason have not gotten along.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. I guess there was just plenty of airtime on CBS Sports Network. Or there's just room for one Northeast independent because UMass has to deal with ESPN. So
Yeah.
staying in the group of five, Buffalo just beat the brakes off of, well, actually they didn't beat the brakes. They started off that way. They started with like 31-7 lead against Akron, but end of the day, Akron came back but Buffalo closed the game out. Buffalo is one win away from eligibility. They have Kent State, I guess down the road. So I think 6-6 is very realistic with how bad Kent State's been this year. They have a couple other winnable games. Any thoughts on Buffalo's year this year? They really slid, I will say, throughout the middle of the year, as I guess a lot of top teams in the MAC did, but Buffalo still has a chance for a solid year.
Yeah, I mean, 6-6, 7-5, potentially. I mean, I don't know how things will churn out against Eastern Michigan. That looks like they're probably Eastern Michigan be favored there at home, and Ball State at home for Buffalo probably win. So yeah, 7-5 seems realistic. Maybe 6-6 at the floor. Yeah, I mean they had a couple of losses mid season here, but you know that happens. They're finding their way in the MAC. Um, yeah, I don't have a ton of thoughts more than that.
Yeah, me either, honestly. Good to see Buffalo Ball eligible. I mean, I have them playing in the Boca Raton Bowl. They haven't played in the Florida Bowl ever, which would be really poetic for them. Just a little history lesson on Buffalo. I'm sure we know about the 1958 Buffalo team that turned down I think it was a Citrus Bowl bid to, I guess, a Citrus Bowl bid in Orlando because or the bowl game would not allow Buffalo to bring their black players. So would be very, very poetic. I'm having to do math right now. 66 years after that for Buffalo to finally get a Florida Bowl. So that's where I have Buffalo, I guess. Um, Going on, I guess I'm gonna group these three teams since they're on a bye week as our kind of last segment. So we have three 4-4 teams remaining in the Northeast that we haven't gone over. We got Rutgers, West Virginia, and Boston College, all of which coincidentally had a bye week this week. Out of those three, John, who do you think have the best chances of reaching a bowl? Out of the three, and I guess who is I guess what's the best case scenario for each squad?
So, I'm trying to remember what we said about each of these. I don't think we loved any of their remaining schedules. So, just looking at them really quick, Rutgers goes Minnesota, Maryland, Illinois, Michigan State. None of those do I imagine Rutgers is favored, let alone getting two. West Virginia. I think I think if I remember correctly, West Virginia has to be the most likely here. Yeah, they got Cincinnati, Baylor, UCF, Texas Tech. Getting two wins there does seem a little dicey, but potentially doable. And Maryland. Maryland's got Oregon, Rutgers, Iowa, Penn State. So yeah, that seems rough as well. So it's got to be West Virginia. If they get two wins out of the Big 12, where you see them.
Oh man, I think for West Virginia, I think that if they were to get two wins, I think the rest of the bowl games would pass them up based on geography. And I would think they would end up in the guaranteed rate bowl, I think, yeah, out in Arizona. They went there in 2021, and that currently has like last place among Big 12 schools. If not that bowl, I can see that if that bowl passes over them, then I would say Armed Forces Bowl or the First Responder Bowl. They end up in Dallas for the holidays. So I'd say either Guaranteed Rate Bowl or one of the Dallas ESPN bowls. And I think, like you said, West Virginia has the most likely scenario out of any of those schools because the Big 12 is very I don't even know how to describe the term because you have top heavy as a term. It's very middle heavy. Like there is just a lot of parity in the Big 12. So I can see West Virginia beating Baylor and UCF and even Texas Tech. I can see them winning two out of those three games to become bowl eligible. For the other two schools, Rutgers and BC, I just don't really see it, especially with the troubles that Rutgers has on offense. And uh, I don't think they match up well. I think their best chance for a win is Maryland, but I don't think they match up well with Maryland because USC threw the ball around the yard on Rutgers or last Friday night. In Maryland, we know Billy Edwards Jr. loves to throw the ball. And then Boston College has SMU and Pitt, which means they have to beat Syracuse or UNC or Syracuse and UNC, I should say. So I got to agree. I think West Virginia has the best chance for a bowl game out of those Lambert Trophy eligible teams that are 4-4.
No.
Yep. But UMass too. We didn't forget about UMass. They're just not bowl eligible. They did put up a strong fight against Mississippi State, and I think this will be my first acknowledgement on a podcast that I was wrong about UMass covering the 18-point spread. I really thought they had it. I thought Mississippi State would come in with a who cares attitude, but I guess uh I guess they didn't want to lose their undefeated record against the UMass Minutemen. But I think a lot to be proud of for Don Brown and that squad. I think that team will compete well in the MAC, but this year. So just very limited dialogue in our bowl podcast for UMass, sadly.
Yeah, and if they would consider moving their school to the Midwest, I think that they would fit in well in the MAC, or at least maybe to somewhere in between Pittsburgh and Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Buffalo, the Amherst rivalry, I guess the incoming Mayor's Cup or whatever they're gonna come up with for the UMass Amherst versus SUNY Amherst, aka Buffalo rivalry. It's gonna be something. I think immediately it's a top three rivalry in the MAC, UMass Buffalo. I really think so. I think those two cities have animosity just based on the name against each other. You know who the better Amherst is, and I think it really takes off. I really think it just becomes a controversial rivalry. So. I mean, I think they
I
become an
hope
instant hit
so.
in the back.
I hope so. I think it'll be a decent basketball rivalry too. I mean, UMass is coming down, taking a step down in basketball to go to the MAC, and I hope Buffalo can regain some of its former glory as when Nate Oates was there, and kind of make that a premier rivalry for a mid major conference.
Yeah, I think the first year, um, I gotta say, I think one of the coaches goes John Chaney on UMass's coach and goes for his throat at a press conference and says, "I'll kill you." I think that's the spirit that UMass needs, and I think it's gonna come back in the MAC.
It's the way you got to stir it up. You got to build some
Yeah.
rivalries.
Yep, got to do it there. But I think that's all we have for this week, John. Just an action-packed week. A lot of Northeast teams still in play for bowl games and fun bowl destinations. Some staying in the Northeast, unfortunately. I guess at least in the winter, unfortunately, and some snowbirding out to great destinations. But is there anything final that you have to say?
Nothing for me.
All right, John. Thanks again. It's always fun just talking about these bowl scenarios and about the Lambert Trophy. Of course, the race is heating up and everything. But till next time, everyone, I'm the Burger Popper. Peace, love, and soul.